the 6th edition of Artemis Women in Action Film Festival. I am Danielle Burgio, and I'm hosting today the All Stars of Stunts panel. And I've got 3 amazing stunt women for you. We've got Dejay Roestenberg, who you have seen on Jessica Jones, on John Wick II, and Girl on a Train. We also have Marissa Labog. You have seen her work on Logan, on Birds of Prey, and on Aquaman. And last but not least, Alyma Dorsey. You've seen her work on Ghostbusters, Captain America, and Joker. So come and join us, meet these amazing ladies, and get inspired by stunts.
Yay. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for making time. I know everyone here is super busy, and so I really appreciate everybody carving out some time. You guys all have tremendous resumes. You're all well respected in the stunt community. I'd love to just kind of go around really quick, and maybe you can just introduce yourself and say how you got started in stunts, if you have any specialties, and maybe if you have any like favorite standout projects that you've worked on.
Oh boy.
Let's start with Marissa.
Yeah. I'm Marissa Labog, and I actually was a professional dancer. So my skill sets were ballet, modern dance, break dancing. And then I also, in addition to that, have studied martial arts because my parents were scared that I was going to get kidnapped because I'm very small. So I was studying that as well, in addition to dancing. And I had gotten a job as an actress, and they needed someone to get shot in the head and fall down. And I was like, okay, sure, I can do that. And then from that point on, I was working with a bunch of amazing stuntmen and women. And so they kind of were like you with your background in movement, with your martial arts training. By that point, I was kind of dabbling in like tricking and parkour as well. So they were just like, you should get into stunts, and really kind of took me under the wing and taught me quite a bit of what it means to be a stunt woman. So that's kind of how I got started. Yeah.
Do you have any like standout projects in the scope of your career that
so many
you're exceptionally proud of?
Oh, well, I mean, obviously Logan is definitely one of my favorites because I actually got to help create that character movement wise. And so I think that was a huge challenge, but also it was super fulfilling to be able to live out that dream of being a superhero, basically. But I think the other one that I think I'm also most proud of is my second job ever. I think is when I really realized what stunts was about, because I was flown down to Mexico City. I was having to do this very intense kind of sequence of movements of jumping off buildings, and it was for Colombiana. And I didn't know any of the components of really what that took. And so I learned wire work. I learned, like what it meant to really kind of go through things in a way that I had never really been pushed to do before. So that, I think for me, was really like the start of my career in the sense of really understanding what it meant to be that physical and to kind of take on that role as a stunt performer. So I think that was also one of the other ones that I think really helped me understand what I was getting into and really kind of drove the love for it as well. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Great. All right. I have lots of things I want to talk to you about all of that when we come around. Alyma, how about you? How and when did you get started in stunts? What's your background?
Well, for me, it was very interesting because I was doing the AVP qualifiers and playing beach volleyball. And at the time, the AVP went bankrupt, and we didn't quite know what we were going to do, my partners and I. And so we all kind of separated at the time. And so Quentin Tarantino happened to be one of my sponsors for volleyball and someone I also personally trained. So he said to me, he goes, Alyma, why don't you move with me to Louisiana while we film Django, since you aren't playing volleyball right now? And he's like, and you can just make sure I'm healthy, make sure I'm training, I'm eating right, and all that kind of stuff. So he put me up in my own house, gave me a car, a bike, all that kind of stuff. And every day I'd be on set watching them film Django. So I met the entire stunt team. And as I was sitting there one day, I went up to him. I think we had like 2 months left of shooting. And I go, Q, I can do stunts. And he's like, yes, you can. And I remember he introduced me to Jeff Dashnaw, who was the stunt coordinator at the time. And I started training with Clay Fontenot and Christy Weathersby Ball and Emily Brokes. And there was one other guy, Nito. I started training with this guy named Nito there. And 2 months later, I booked the butler as I was training with them. I booked the butler because they referred my name and I met the coordinator. And then 2 weeks later, I booked American Horror Story. And so I literally never went back to playing professional beach volleyball. And 2.5 years later, Quentin Tarantino hired me in The Hateful Eight. So it was kind of like a full circle. Like I started out as his trainer and playing professional beach volleyball and ended up doing stunts. So for me, it was really right place, right time, and also being ready for that opportunity when it presented itself. So that's kind of how I got into stunts.
That's amazing.
And it's amazing.
And you like any standout projects in your career that you're exceptionally proud of?
You know what? To be honest with you, since I didn't grow up doing all of these things, like a lot of people grew up doing martial arts and everything, I didn't. So every project for me was something I had to learn and prepare for. So for me, I would say Ghostbusters was amazing because that was my first full run on a show. But then I'd also say Baywatch because I didn't know how to drive a boat when they hired me, and I did all boat stunts. So they had to teach me how to drive a boat. Then I had to actually perform. So I feel like almost every project for me has been something that I've had to literally prepare for because I didn't have that background of martial arts. I mean, I just came from becoming a professional athlete. So every martial arts that I've learned has been in the past 8 years that I've been in the industry. All my motorcycle work in the past 8 years, all my car work in the past 8 years, boats, horses, martial arts, hitting everything that I've learned has been consistently in the past 8 years. I've had to like prepare for jobs. And so because of that, have become pretty good at just about everything. I don't have one particular thing I'm good at. I can pretty much do everything, including rigging, but so now I just try to be as well-rounded as possible.
Yes, that's definitely, and it sounds like you are. And I've seen your reel, and you do everything.
Yeah,
fantastic. Hi, DJ.
Hi.
Your turn.
Okay, my turn.
Yeah. How did you end up here in this stunt community?
This world.
In this crazy world.
So I suppose my story is slightly different. I actually grew up around the industry and in the industry. My father was a stuntman, and he also, before Chelsea Piers in New York was Chelsea Piers, he used to run North River Studio City. So when we were little and we'd spend the summers there, we were always around the stages, kind of mulling around, watching all the productions, hijacking the golf carts and riding around the studios, fun stuff like that. And I had always wanted to be a stunt woman from a very young age. And I started to try to get into it pretty much as early as I was able to, around 19 years old. And then life brought me on a different path. And I started a family, and I got married and had kids and that whole thing. And then after I was done having my kids, I was like, you know what? It's still something I've always wanted to do. And so it was something I wanted to kind of prove to myself and prove to everybody that there's, no limitations really to what you can do. So I went out again and tried to see if I could make things happen. And fortunately enough, I was able to get a couple really good opportunities. On episodic television is pretty much where I've spent most of my career. And once I got into it, it kind of was thrown right into the fire. And I guess that would be right into the next question as far as projects go, because I was very, very green going into it when I got Jessica Jones. And so that's by far my, the standout project in my career. It was just such a long run on doing all 3 episodes. I mean, all 3 seasons, and Defenders. I learned so much, and it was kind of the same thing. It was like just being thrown into it. There were so many skills I did not have when I started, and it was so I'm forever grateful for the opportunity that I was given, because it was kind of a learn as you go thing. And I had so many supportive people that were there to, between other performers and coordinators and teammates that were there to, help guide me in the right direction.
Yeah. So you said your father was a stuntman. So you grew up like getting a certain amount of skills and training.
Yeah,
And
whether I
then-
knew it was happening or not.
Right. So there's a certain thing that you learn just, whether it be in the gym doing martial arts or whatever. And then how do things differ for you when you go onto set? Like, so you said when you were actually on the series, you really started learning so much. How is that different from what you were learning just through your dad in the backyard or?
Well, I think it's similar to, say, if I were to go watch a volleyball tournament, you watch it and they make it so easy, so seamless, like anybody could do it. And then when you actually physically have to do those things yourself, you realize there's different elements that you've never really taken into consideration. So it's one thing playing around in the backyard or going out with your dad and, throwing 90s in the car in a parking lot or something. But then when you're actually the one, the one doing it yourself, you realize like, oh, it doesn't just happen. There's pedals that have to be pushed and wheels that have to be turned. So it's a little bit different. I love the learning experience. I love seeing all those little pieces that I never realized were there growing up, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, Alyma, what you're saying, and all the learning that you've done in the last 8 years, I kind of feel like as stunt women or as stunt people, that never changes because the stunt is always different. The script is always different. So even if you've done multiple high falls, even if you've done multiple, fight scenes, firebirds, whatever, every scene, every stunt is so unique and so different. So I feel like there's a certain mentality, maybe, that stunt people have to have.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Because like what you're saying, you've learned all these new things. So you started off in the athletic world, Alyma, and then you came to stunts, and now you're having to just expand and just take on so many new skills. So is there any particular mentality or any particular technique, or like how do you approach learning something brand new?
Well, you know what? Actually, being in the stunt industry is very parallel to being a professional athlete because the thought process is really the same. It's all about being disciplined. It's all about repetition. It's all about having that mindset of if you fail, try again, never giving up, having that perception of never stopping, and also being a good listener and being able to take in information and apply it to your action immediately to have a different outcome with what you're doing at that moment. So stunts and being a professional athlete are pretty similar. So that transition was very easy for me. I feel like a stunt performer is the athlete of the entertainment industry anyway.
Oh,
So it's pretty much the same. It all takes the same kind of mindset. That mindset of even if you don't do it right, inside you can get it. So there's that burning desire to making sure you not only get it right, but you please the person that you're doing it for as well, because we're a team, right? So our team is only as strong as our weakest link. So you want to be up to speed. You want to be up to par. So you want to have that discipline and that urgency to make sure you perfect whatever it is that you're given. So the mindset of a stunt performer and an athlete are, to me, very identical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And there's a lot of discipline that goes with that.
Absolutely.
And a lot of, yeah. Great. So Marissa, you talked a little about your fight background. I mean, and your dance background, which is great. I am also come from a dance background. I love that transition from dancer to stuntwoman because so much of what the job is choreography.
Yeah.
Whether it's a fight scene or not, right? Stunts is choreography, even if it means you have to do a stair fall but you have to, at the bottom of the stairs, crack your head on this planter. So you've got to like be able to know your body's got to go this way, your head's got to fall this way. You have to have a certain timing.
Yep.
So I'd love to talk a little bit about choreography. Now, for you, I'm imagining at a young age, that's a skill in itself that you learned, right? Like,
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think kind of what Alyma's saying too, like, I think the transition as a dancer into stunts was actually, there was a lot of similarities within that as well, in terms of learning to use movement to tell a story, first off, which I think is really vital. And then other skills that I didn't really know was going to be something that lended really well to stunts in terms of picking up choreography. Spatial awareness was huge, that I just kind of naturally had because of my dance background, and then was like, oh, this makes total sense, that it's really important, especially within fight choreography when you have multiple people and knowing, like, spatially, like where you need to be. So I do feel like there's a great correlation between the two. It's just a different intention more than anything else, of like what you're going to be doing within that story of who you are. And like, now instead of like extending a certain movement, now you're actually trying to like kill someone, So I think like, having that background was really a great, kind of stomping ground for myself to build to becoming a stunt performer, that I didn't realize until once I was in it. And I'm like, oh, this makes total sense. And then the other thing I think is just having that coordination to be able to look at something and emulate that and kind of take it on and learn something quickly. Because like all of you said, you are learning on the job 90% of the time, because you might be, you might have an idea of what that movement is, but then you got to translate it to what's happening in that moment in that space that you're around. And yeah, so.
And especially with fight choreography, sometimes, you're learning sequences like very quickly. So you have to memorize, almost
Absolutely.
like you would have to memorize dialogue as an actress. You have to memorize these movements.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I remember on Logan, there was a sequence that we had spent some time on building, and on the day it was scrapped and we had to create an entirely new fight scene. And we had probably 20 minutes to create it. And so it's just like, I remember just watching, like this is during reshoot. So I was watching Sunny Sun and David Leitch going through movement, and me just kind of standing there being like, okay, I got it. You know what I mean? And again, that is my dance background, to be able to watch something and be like, oh yeah.
Don't you love when don't you love when everything's the same, but now you have to do it all to the left?
Yes,
So
to the
you
other
just went
side. We had
everything to
that
the right, and now they're like, just that shift of everything now to your left. You're like, okay, wait a minute. Okay, got it. Okay.
That happens all the time too. We're like, now I need to just translate exactly what I did over here, but now do it over. Yeah. So I think that all of that, to be able to have that coordination and have that kind of ability to be malleable in that moment, I think is definitely something I'm really glad I had the background to do, for sure.
How about you, DJ? So, how do you deal with choreography? I think some people's brain like clicks onto that very easily. Again, when you've been training from a young age to learn sequences at lightning speed. Is that something you had training with, or is that something you've had to pick up at a later point in your life?
That is probably my biggest challenge, is learning choreography, because I didn't have a dance background growing up, and I think it makes a huge part. I know even working with actresses, you can tell the ones that come from some kind of dance background, just the way that they know how, if you're doubling with them, and the way they know how to, the spatial awareness and the movement. But for me, it has not been something that's come naturally. It's probably the most challenging part for me. I can fall down great. I can do a lot of other things really great. But once it gets to a very involved choreography, it takes me a minute more than it would take most people. And I think that, I don't know if it is all just because I didn't grow up with it, if it's something else, but I always find it much more challenging. And I always am in such awe when other performers can pick it up so easily. And I'm like, oh, just because I know it's hard, harder for me. Not everything But I think that's across the board. Everybody will have their certain specialties where they're
Absolutely.
like, oh, this comes to me, no problem. And I think that's where it all, I think that's the beauty of it, is nobody is exactly the same when it comes to those things. But no, I don't, that's my tough spot.
Well, it's a particular part of the brain that I think, especially if you started training that part of your brain from a young age,
Right.
it's there. But I think most people do not have that strength in that area. How about you, Alyma? Do you also, how is that for you, the choreography bit?
I used to think I was really good at picking up choreography until I got to this show that I'm on right now. and I'm with like a whole martial artist team. I'm the only American fight person, and we'll get the choreography and I'll get it, but as we're doing it, something won't work. So they'll say, okay, how about change this and do this and then do that and that. And these guys can be like, oh, okay. And I'm like, wait, hold up. Don't do that. You want me to change that. So yeah, it's harder. I think the more you work and the harder your fights become, because on this show, I am a superhero. So it's a different kind of fight. It's more intense. It's longer. You hit the ground, you get back up, you don't die. You smack into the wall, guess what? The normal person is dead. No, you get back up. So it's like, so the choreography is so different and they change it on the fly. And so I'm definitely having a harder time getting my brain to let loose of something that I just learned and substitute something else in and then be able to perform it immediately. That's the first thing. The second thing I've noticed is, I don't know if this is a COVID thing or a different way that they're doing previses, but we now do the dialogue. So in the previses, we do the fight and give the dialogue. So now I'm like, okay, what did she just say? And so it's super challenging now because now we aren't just responsible for just the choreography. We are responsible for the dialogue in the previses that they're showing to production. So we have to say all of that and get all the emotions right and everything. So it's very challenging. But the one thing I say is the more we do it, the better we get. Sure. So we might start off a little rusty, but as time goes on, we just get better. And you just have to, take it like a grain of salt, just have a short memory. Don't let it get you down too bad and just keep moving on to the next. But it's super challenging. But I think that's what we love about it.
Yeah, I do. I agree with that. I think that's what we do love about being a stunt performer, because everything is so different. Like you had said, Danielle, like it's depending on what the stunt is, even though we might have done something similar to it, it's always different. And I think that's totally, I appreciate that challenge, and then in addition to that, you're in a room, like DJ was saying, you're in a room of people who all have their specialty. And so sometimes like I remember being on a show and this woman that I was working with is an amazing driver. And that's not my strong suit. And she can literally drive anything. And she was taking a wheelchair and was like doing some crazy, all these stuff on a wheelchair, just like for fun. And for me, it was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, how do I do that? But then when it came to the fight stuff, I was really good and able to pick things up, and she had a little bit harder time. So it was like, we were able to kind of play with each other and like teach each other these different components, and so she was helping me like do some wheelchair gags, you know what I mean? And I was helping with the fights. And I feel like that's kind of how we grew as a team. So I love that as well. Like that challenge situation. I feel like that's what makes it super exciting, that it's, and that you're constantly having to grow. Like there's no way to be stagnant in this industry. I feel like you are.
Once you're stagnant, you probably need to exit, because I feel like you can't be stagnant. If you're still working, that means you're constantly growing and you're constantly learning, because nothing's the same. There's no normal in this industry.
It's so true. The amount of times I'm like, I'm getting paid to do what now? Like, what am I doing? Yeah.
Wait, I'm setting myself on fire again. Didn't I just do that last episode?
Exactly.
Okay, that's what you want. Yeah.
Yes. Speaking of not normal, I would say, DJ, it is in this industry, it's not normal for people to have children and then become a stunt woman. I know stunt women that have had children and have come back to stunts. And that in itself is challenging, even when they've established a career, because once women sometimes have children, there's a perception of like, oh, they're a mom now, right? So they can't do stunts.
Which I don't even know what that means.
It's so weird. I mean, it is a weird perception. And I would like to think that that is changing now. I have more and more stunt women friends that are more open about having kids and coming back.
Yeah.
For a long time, they would hide it.
Hide it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hide it. So, I mean, was it just an organic entry into stunts, or did you have a challenge with that, being a mom? Maybe it worked in your favor that you weren't established before you had kids. I don't know. What was that like? It's unusual.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because I think about that often, and what you had said makes a lot of sense, because I see women that hide it, or that hold off until a later time to have children. So in a way, I would never turn it. Sometimes I wonder, like, oh, I wonder if I'd started earlier. But I would never, in a million years, like, trade the way that it all worked out, because I could imagine. I mean, we all know how consuming this industry is. So I can imagine if I had started earlier than I did, even if I had only had, one or two at that time, that I might not have all of them, because it's hard to find the time to do that in this industry. And then to think about the idea of coming back afterwards. So I think the fact that it was already there and that was already a part of my life, it wasn't something that either pushed me or held me back from going for it. Like, this was a decision I made, that I wanted to see whether or not I could be the stunt performer that I wanted to be when I was 17 years old. And I didn't look at my children as being a reason that it shouldn't be able to happen. I could make assumptions that maybe sometimes it's, I'm looked at as, oh, I can't hire her for this because she's a mom, but I don't know if that's fair either, to say that someone has not given me a job because I'm a mother, or has thought that I, couldn't do certain things because I'm a mom, because I have been given a lot of opportunities. So even if that was thought, I think that I have changed their mind on that, if that's fair to say.
Yeah. I think that's great. And I think in your circumstance, even though it is a bit unusual in this industry, maybe it does work in your favor, because you proved yourself after the fact. So you built your reputation when you were already in this position and who you are. And speaking of your kids, is this something that, it started with your dad? Is this something that you want to pass along? Do you encourage them? Do you want them to do what you're doing? Do they want to do what you're doing?
That's a good question. I want them to do whatever they want to do, whatever makes them happy. My oldest daughter, Kylie, is in the industry. And she's been doing it since she was about 18. She's 23 now. So she's in the industry. Whether or not the other four decide to follow suit, I could see maybe two of them maybe going in that direction, and then two of them maybe not, just by their current interest, but they're young, so that could change at any point. I mean, I'd love to have them by my side and, to continue that generation, generations down of stunt performers, but I guess we'll see. We'll see where the cards land.
Yeah, we never know where life's going to take us.
No,
you never know. Well, speaking of kids, Marissa, and you mentioned earlier that you're tiny. How tall are you?
I'm 4'10".
And so, being of that stature, do you double kids?
Sure.
Often, or
quite often? Yeah. I mean, I've been actually lately doubling shorter actors, which is unusual for me. Usually I do double kids, which is lovely. And I'm also glad that I have a background of teaching, because I think that's also helped in that circumstance of guiding these young ones into like what actually need to do, and just also kind of hopefully instilling some etiquette, as well with some of the younger ones. It is an interesting thing, because they then outgrow you in terms of height, which is always like, hey guys, like, let's stump your growth a little bit until, so it's kind of one of those things. I have them for a moment of a certain period of their life, and then I like see them grow into who they are, and it's a lovely experience actually to kind of see that happen. But yeah, I double kids quite a bit.
And do you think that your size helps or hinders your career in any way?
I go through that on either end quite a bit, because I do think like being a unique size does help, because I'm not amongst like the larger groupings of people who are about the same.
There's a huge pool of, 5'5", 5'6".
Absolutely, but it does, make things very specific. And sometimes like there was a period of time where like it felt like I was kind of stuck in a certain world of movement, world of stunts, that I was like, okay, like I need to get pushed again, and then Logan happened and I was like, okay, great. Like, so there are moments where sometimes it can, like I have to find the growth in each situation, because sometimes they can get very similar if you're working in a certain network, or I got to a place where I got to know a lot of like the same directors and the same producers in a certain sphere. So I kind of started to do a lot of the same things. So I kind of had to find moments for myself to grow. But then there's other opportunities that came up that just kind of like then lit me on fire, and was like, okay, like let's do a lot more like what you're able to do. So I think I feel very blessed to be this size and to be able to be amongst the shorty gang of people who I love, by the way, like and we ping pong with each other, like giving each other jobs. So I think it's a great group of women that I have the honor to be in the same kind of sphere with, because they're all so talented, and usually like we're like, oh, well, if I'm not available, like this person's available, or like we'll kind of ping pong around each other and like, hey, who's available for this? And we also know each other's strengths, so we can kind of gear with that as well. So yeah, I think ultimately it's great. There are times where sometimes I'm like, I would like to be in, other superhero things, where like maybe I'm not a child. Like I could, like there are those moments, sure. But yeah, I think ultimately it's been a really great experience, and to be able to have my height be an asset for most people is great.
Yeah. And what about you, Alyma? Because you're not you don't fall in that 5'5", 5'6" range. You're 5'10", 11?
I'm 5'9.5".
Okay.
5'10". And it blows my mind that I currently am doubling like number 48. Like I'm on my 48th different actress that I'm doubling right now. And I don't look like any of the actresses I So like my height hasn't really stopped me, I think. Because since I also drive cars and motorcycles and stuff, that also helps me, because in a vehicle you can't really see the height. So that was also one of the reasons why I took up that, that actual niche, because I didn't want to be hindered because of my size. So I haven't had any issues with that per se. As a matter of fact, the actress I'm doubling now is like 2 inches taller than me. She's like 6 feet. So it's really weird that I find in the past few years we've had a lot more taller actresses come into the game. So that's kind of helped me out a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take any opportunity to get in there. And I do think that being out of the general pool is an overall asset.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that. That for sure.
What about you, DJ? How tall are you?
So average.
I am too. I'm 5'6", so
I'm 5'7". Yeah.
yeah. You're a little over average, but
A little, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe on a good day when I first wake up, maybe 5'7.5".
if you had a good stretch the night before,
Good stretch the night
did
before.
yoga.
Yeah, so I'm right smack in the middle of it. So I really have to work hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you do. I watched your reel because you were featured by Artemis. Was it 2019 that they honored you?
Yes, it was. Yes, that was so fun.
And I got to see your reel from that. And I mean, you are really like, you take some hard ass hits.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to say like,
Yeah.
that was the standout thing from your reel is like, this girl can take a beating.
There were a lot of oohs and ahs when that was on the screen that night. I was like, oh, yeah, I felt that one too.
Yeah. And I think, that's such a specific skill and a specific talent of stunt people to be able to take those hard hits or to be able to like sometimes to be able to take them, other times to be able to sell them. Because a lot of people, I think, they think, oh yeah, I can do stunts. I want to do this and that. And I'm like, yeah, but are you willing to throw yourself into a brick wall as hard as you can? Not just once.
Yeah.
Like many, many times. So what is your, because that really can take a beating on your body, obviously. So how do you approach that? How do you protect yourself? How do you keep yourself strong and healthy?
Yeah, some of the hits are really big. And I think, I've explored a lot of options when it comes to padding and things like that, because you also are probably all very familiar with, as females, we sometimes don't get to wear as much as we'd like. I've been very fortunate with some of the projects I've been on that I was blessed with good costumes, so I could put stuff under there. But I think a lot of it has to do with the recovery afterwards and knowing what works for your body. That it's the same with everything else. Not everything that's going to work for you is going to work for everyone else. So I've kind of mastered my own little system of what works for me, where all my sharp edges are, what side I fall better on without feeling it, what side. It comes down to little things like that sometimes. You have no choice but to throw yourself into the brick wall. But if you have a choice whether or not that you usually land better on the right side than the left side, then maybe you can talk to someone about making sure that can happen. But things like that, I think once you know your own body, you know how to sell those big hits and where exactly those big hits should happen on you. And then recovery and taking care of yourself afterwards is huge. I know the only times that I've ever really felt like my body was breaking down were those times when it was go, 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 and there wasn't that recovery time in between, or even if there was that recovery time in between, I wasn't taking full advantage of it. I wasn't, doing the right things for my body, whether or not it be, eating right or getting enough rest or taking that time out to go get myself that massage, simple things like that. So I think that's how I keep taking the big hits and it not having a super big effect on me. My own little tricks, and then taking care of my body afterwards.
So important. So important. I mean, it's the tool, right? You got to keep it strong, agile.
Exactly.
And speaking of Artemis, Marissa, I actually saw your short film play. I think that was also 2019, I believe it was.
Yeah, something like that. Or maybe or the year before. I'm not quite sure.
Anyway, anybody that's out there, I don't know, is it public? Is it?
It is, yeah.
And it's called When Kids Grow Up?
Yes.
It's a fantastic short. You guys should totally check it out.
Thank you.
And you get to see all her badass moves, but we also get to see you be a badass actress. Like, you're a fantastic actress.
Oh, thank you so much. No, and I love doing it. And I think that's something I feel like a lot of people don't talk about with stunts, is that there's an acting component to it. And I think it's a really important one, because we do have to pretend about certain things of whether it be, how hurt you really are, or if you are a housewife versus a superhero, there's a different way of moving and a different way of going. So I love it. I mean, acting is something I've been doing for quite a while. And so I love to kind of marry these things together. So I think that's been my journey thus far. I'm making more films and seeing kind of where I can push that envelope as well. So it's been great. I have a production company called Up Productions right now, and so we have 2 in the film festival circuit, and I am writing another one, and we are starting all the pre-production stuff on it. So It's been a really great journey. I really love doing it.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to see more of your films.
I mean, you made
Definitely.
a film as well, correct?
I did. I think the first time I saw your short, we actually were in the same
Same
block.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did a couple of shorts. One was called Lucy Falls and the other one was called Girl Trip. And
Yeah.
we played in the same block, and yours really stood out to me. And when I was getting ready for the panel, I watched it again and I was like,
Oh.
man, it's so good.
I mean, I love, because I love storytelling just in general, but I think because of my background, I love the fact of telling story through action. I think it's a very powerful tool. And I think it should be respected as that, and I think it is a really interesting thing to now also create with that in mind. So I love it.
Yes. And I love what you said that, not just when you have to do dialogue, and like Alyma, you're talking about when you're doing previs and things like that, we have to, do the lines and all that. But yes, there is acting just in the running or falling or whatever it is, that, and I think a lot of people forget that sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's what really makes a great stunt person, when you
absolutely
embody all those things. And Alyma, I know you're an actress as well. I've seen your work as well.
Well, I wouldn't really call myself an actress. I mean, that's, I can't, because I'm sitting here with Marissa, so I can't like literally say I'm an actress. If there's some lines that need to be told before I do some action, I'm in. But
so is that another thing that coming from your past world and then coming into the entertainment industry that you've had to learn, and you've had to like step out of your comfort zone? Is it a comfortable thing for you, or is it something that, you've had to sort of stretch yourself to step into?
It wasn't that difficult, only because, I've been modeling since I was 8, and I had a commercial agent, I had a sports agent, I had all of those things in my journey before even becoming a stunt person. I was already in SAG and AFTRA before I even did my first stunt gag, just because I did commercials, so it wasn't a hard stretch for me. I had also, done some acting classes as well as improv and commercial classes. So I already kind of had that in my wheelhouse. So that's why I made that statement of just being ready for the opportunities that are given to you. Because when stunts presented itself to me, everything you needed for stunts, I had already studied and didn't even know. I'd already done the commercials. I'd already done the acting. I'd done some training, but I didn't grow up in training, but I had done some training. I'd already had the etiquette on set from just being there for 7 months. So when that door opened, I was kind of ready. So the acting part doesn't really get me. I just don't call myself an actress, because it's not something that I'm disciplined in. I feel like in order to call yourself that's something that you have to kind of study and really want to be. And that's not quite my thing, but I love to speak a line before I beat you up.
And you're very natural on camera. You have a beautiful energy about you, and you're very open, and you come across so well. And I think that's probably a big reason why you got the amazing opportunity to be one of the hosts of the documentary Stuntwoman, the Untold Hollywood Story. Mm-hmm. So, and that's another thing, if you guys out there have not seen this documentary, it's fantastic. And I feel like that must have been a huge honor to be not just a part of it, but you're very featured. You're one of the hosts. So how did that happen?
No idea what I was getting myself into. It was just one of those things where they called, I showed up. I didn't know the potential of it. I knew that they were speaking to me about it. And, in Hollywood, people speak to you about a lot of things. Everyone's planning something big all the time, and everyone has these big hopes and dreams of where it's going to go. And, it's going to be this and it's going to, but I had no clue. All I knew is the people that I was working with were amazing, and they made me feel comfortable, and they made me want to be a part of the project. And they gave me a platform to stand on where I can kind of tell my journey, because when you look at me versus everyone else that was there, I'm the newest person in the whole bunch, the youngest person as far as in the industry is concerned. So I was learning the most out of everyone there. So I was just so honored to just be a part of that whole process and, you know, to just tell my side of the story and just to share what it was like coming into the industry later in the game, being surrounded by all these amazing stunt women and then having to catch up and be able to perform right next to them, you know? So it was just an honor for me to be there. Absolutely.
That's great. That's great. How about you, DJ? Have you done some acting? Are you finding that your job is requiring that of you at all? Is it
Well,
intimidating?
similar to the previous thing, I've done acting and delivering dialogue in the previous, but I remember when in the first season of Jessica Jones, I remember that when I had to just even say lines across from who was I working with? I can't even remember right now. But when I had to deliver lines so that he could react and perform towards me, nothing came out of my mouth. Like not a single. It was so terrible. I was like, my mouth open, and I'm kind of shy. And even this whole thing is not really in my comfort zone per se. So yeah, acting has not come very naturally to me. I love physical acting. I love mimicking the act, the mannerisms and the movements of the actors that I portray as a double. But as far as delivering dialogue and being an actress myself, one, I don't really have a huge desire to do it. And I think that's something that you have to have if you want to really sell it.
Sure.
Yeah. And two, yeah, it hasn't come very naturally to me. I've definitely got much more comfortable with it over the years. If I have to, I will. But I'm certainly not trying to put myself in for any acting roles.
Gotcha. And since you have had such a long run, because Jessica Jones, how many seasons or episodes?
I think altogether it was 39 episodes. It was 3 seasons. And then we had Defenders chunked in there too, somewhere in the middle of 1 and 2, I think.
And can you tell everybody who the character that you double?
Character I doubled was Jessica Jones, Kristen Ritter, yeah. It was great. And that was, like I said early on, I couldn't have been more fortunate to have been given that opportunity because it was such a great learning. Let's put it this way. I could not have paid someone to give me the experience I got on that show.
Right.
Couldn't have.
Yeah.
And
what a great show to start and get to do so many amazing things. And then, you know, speaking of acting and actresses, so you're working really side by side with her for such a long time. You really must have developed a relationship and a bond. Like, how is that working with an actress so intensely for such a long time?
Yeah, definitely. Being with someone for that amount of time, there's a certain amount of trust that's built up, and it didn't come right away. I know in the beginning, and I think the fact that I am kind of shy and I'm not really outspoken or too outgoing even in that matter, you know, I show up to work, I do what I'm supposed to do, and in the beginning, it took us some getting to know each other before that relationship was really built. But then once we both felt each other out and realized what we were all about and our intentions, we built a really, really strong, beautiful relationship. One that by the end of, our relationship was pretty solid by the end of season 1, but by the end of the whole run of the show, the relationship was so good and the trust between us, like her sharing that character with me was huge. And that's what it felt like towards the end, that we were kind of sharing that character. She handled, like I said, the parts that I certainly couldn't do, and she was magnificent at doing it. And then on the flip side, she trusted in me to do all the things, not that she wasn't capable of, but if there was something that she didn't want to do, or towards the end, and I think this is public knowledge, so I can share it, towards the end of season 3, she was expecting. So there was a lot of things that she wasn't doing, and she totally trusted to just say, let DJ do it. Let DJ do that. Let DJ do this. And that was that was part of the beauty of it. She trusted that if she could walk away, not even be on set, and I would become Jessica Jones for her. And
That's amazing.
it was awesome.
Amazing.
That's tremendous.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start winding it down here. And just to sort of wrap things up, I'd love to know from everybody, like, if there's something you have that you're working on that you want to tell us, that's great. Otherwise, just what would be your ideal next, in the next year? Now that we're all like seeing the light at the end of the pandemic, I think the industry has learned how to deal with it, and numbers are going down, vaccines are going up, so it's certainly feeling like we're coming back into a new world. And I think everybody's excited to like move forward. So if you can paint the next year, what's on your horizon, DJ?
On my horizon, I'm traveling right now. I'm pretty sure I signed some kind of paper that is not allowing me to say what I'm working on right now. But and I enjoy traveling, so hopefully I get to do some other projects that are, out of New York. I'd love to do some more film. I do a lot of television, so I'd love to do some more film within the next year. And I think I see that happening. I'm not sure what yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm looking forward to anything. I love
I know.
I love the everyday something new type of thing too. That's why we're all here, right? Like,
Yes.
It's a different picture every day.
I'm sure your life is very full, especially with 4 running around and the career that you have, and that's a lot to juggle. So yeah. What about you, Marissa?
I'm also working on a couple of films, which is great. So yay, I'm glad things are opening up. I think kind of what DJ's saying, I would love to travel and with a show. I think that would be lovely. But I think also I've been really exploring my own voice within filmmaking. So I've been also kind of really focused on writing scripts and kind of developing that part of myself. So that's been my other side of myself, of like being very blessed to be able to be already working on these films, but then to now also have a little bit of time here and there, like little pockets that I can kind of start working on my own work and seeing where that goes. Yeah.
I hope so. I want to see some more too.
Yay, thank you.
Alyma, what's happening with you, or where are your sights?
Well, a couple things. Currently, I'm working on a show that I would have to say will probably be a highlight of my career, which is the reason I'm even mentioning it, because of COVID, this is the first show that I actually was able to train for a year. So I've been training in capoeira for a full year for this particular show. And I'm a superhero, so that's a highlight. I've always fought superheroes, but I've never played one. So that's super exciting for me with a new craft. So that's awesome. I'm also in post-production of a show that I coordinated, and also in pre-production of another show that I'm coordinating starting in July as well. So I'm getting into coordinating and also second unit directing and producing. So like,
amazing.
That's amazing.
Walking into those steps. So I'm trying to just keep learning and keep growing and just be as amazing as I can be at this moment.
Fantastic.
You're amazing. You're all amazing. Again, I thank everybody for taking time to do this. And I know Artemis thanks you. And
thank you.
Yeah,
this
this
is great.
Fun. Thanks.
Yeah.
good.
Awesome
All
to
right.
see all your faces.
I know.
I can't wait to see you guys in person.
I know, right?
And hug.
Will that ever be?
What is that?
We will. It will happen, and we will all hug.
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'm going to sign off and say goodbye, and thank you, guys. Thank you, girls, for joining.
Marissa, I love you, girl. I miss you, girl. I miss you, girl.